hand side with his classic Erik 15 hatch. It's Erik for the cranky ducklings.
His opponent in the upper right for Prentice Esports is the Canadian Protoss, DisK.
Yeah. So Erik is going to be opening with a 15 hatchery by going up to 14 drones, then canceling an extractor to get the extra drone out, and then going for the hatchery before the overlord. Right, on paper, maybe not the most economic thing that you can do, but it does have like a few upsides. You will get the creep at your natural a little bit faster, potentially the queen a little bit faster as well, which helps with those early adept timings. You will have off timings as well with your links and whatnot to deflect this probe, so it's annoying for your opponent to have to figure out how to contend with that. And you don't ever pretty much get your hatchery blocked on the low ground, so if your opponent is completely unfamiliar with how you play and they send that early probe, they will be missing out in particular against you, right? Because it's a very early probe scout that Protoss sent specifically to get that block that Erik avoids. With that said, DisK has not done that. He goes for the later scout, so probably either just comfortable not blocking the hatchery or familiar with Erik's antic.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, Cats, when we were talking about this in Europe a little bit, this kind of 15 gas cancel idea, you called it and apparently, I guess, when you were talking to Scarlet, you both called it the Erik 15 hatch. Now, when I think of this build, I think of the Zerg Lord as kind of this 15 hatch gas cancel idea. Are you all calling it, are you calling it that 15 hatch, this Erik 15 hatch, because he is the one that is really driving the idea in the meta right now, or because he came up with it, or why is it the Erik 15 hatch over other people?
Just because there's another 15 hatch, so when I'm talking to Scarlet in that context, it's like, which 15 hatch is it? Well, Erik is the frame of reference that we both have that does it, right? So it would be the quickest. But yeah, it's very likely the Zerg Lord, who is a Brazilian player as well, like older, I believe, and yeah, it's you know, they're all friends, Erik, Kaliser, and the Zerg Lord and those guys. So it's very likely that the Zerg Lord could have come up with the idea or been the first one to execute.
Well, Erik is certainly doing some. This has got to be a misclick, right? He's not pumping any more units. The queens are just.
There's links on the way. There's extra queens being made, so I don't think it's a misclick. I think he should probably want to send a drone out soon to get a hatch cancel on the other side. Otherwise, this doesn't make any sense. So it's a it's a wild prediction on my end, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me is send the drone out. It might get caught by the adepts. It does actually. There was a drone going out, but the adepts actually managed to catch it. So Erik's gonna need another drone out with being escorted by these links, because he needs a hatchery cancel on the other side for these queens to be anywhat effective and be able to drop that creep and actually put their energy to use with transfuses, as well as potentially maybe something like a spine crawler contain or attempt at a break, as Erik continues to drone up, so maybe wants to feign some aggression, fake an all-in at the very least. I don't see additional workers coming.
This is wild. So when we first saw the queen can only transfuse on creep, there we go, there's the hatch. There was some theory crafting that said, okay, well, you can go and you can drop a creep tumor on top of where that is, you hatch cancel, and that's how the new queen walk is going to work. And then we didn't see it at all, because I think a lot of Zergs were saying, oh, you know, it's too expensive. You know, it's better for me to either go for a Nidus play or get to layer, or just like stop doing it. But it is really cool to see Erik kind of throwing this up. What is this, 6, 7, 8 months after that change? But you're right. I mean, he is actually, well, he did build a couple more drones, but he's pumping lings behind it here, a couple more overlords, which maybe tells us he wants to commit a little bit more to army. But yeah, I guess for right now, he is kind of vacillating, right? You know, go get a little aggressive, stay at home.
Vacillating?
Yeah, alternating back and forth.
What is that? Oscillating.
I believe vacillating is also maybe I'm wrong. Anyways.
Oh, that's cool. I don't know. I like learning words, so when you say a new word, I like to learn it.
Yeah. Like, it's going back and forth between two different ideas, I think, is how that works. The Oracle. Ooh, Oracle goes down. You get 3 drones, but the Oracle falls. And you know what, Cats, even if Erik doesn't really commit to this super hard, more than he already has, this creep spread is beautiful.
Yeah, especially going up against Stargate, right? Because there's not going to be an easy way to clear the creep without revelations from the Oracles, which is going to cost you energy. But I think for Erik, it's mostly just the fear of God that he put in DisK mind by doing this in the first place. I was surprised that at least the one drone that was already across the map didn't turn into a spine or something like that to help anchor and to, you know, make it a little bit more fearful. But this seems to be a cool strategy when your opponent is going for the Stargate. Now, the bad news for Erik is that DisK still manages to drop his third without really having much trouble on that front. And Erik is behind economically because DisK didn't super overreact, as now the Shade is gonna actually pull on through, knowing that the Lynx are looking after the Adepts and not chasing those Shades. The Roaches are gonna be much slower to follow. And DisK finding the damage that he was looking for here, and Erik not anticipating the aggression as fast as it came.
Yeah, he thought he had him pinned back at home, but yeah, he put a bunch of Adepts on the other side of the map. 6 drones will go down. At least for Erik, the Adepts have been dealt with, right? There was no Warp Prism there. In fact, the Robo was only just now about halfway done. So the only Adepts that DisK was going to have on the other side of the map are the Adepts that he did have on the other side of the map. But Erik, he seems, I mean, he's going to commit to this now. And with the Void Ray on the way, obviously there's no Robo, so you can't add in Immortals. He's up double the army supply. There's no Blink. It's just a bunch of Adepts versus Stalkers with like one Oracle. Maybe eventually there's going to be that Void Ray out. This seems somewhat difficult for DisK to deal with.
Yeah, the Void Ray is going to be key because there's no Queens out on this side of the map anymore. So if Erik could have actually developed his creep at the same time as he was developing it backwards from Erik's position, maybe he could easily reinforce with Queens. As it stands, it's going to be difficult until the Void Ray shows up, but then the Void Ray is just a timer on this army. As Erik continues to reinforce with Zerglings now, that will be the quickest unit that he can use to reinforce in the entirety of the game, and the Void Ray shows up and he says no, and Erik will have to disengage for the time being. Additional 3 Queens are fired up right away from Erik, so just not anticipating this move at all up until now, and unwilling to commit his first 2 Queens without first making another round. Nasty Adept.
Man, it's just the one, right? It's never the big, it's never like the 20 that shade into your mineral lines. Those get dealt with more often than not. But it's like the 1 or 2 that show up a minute later that just, at this point, it only killed 3 workers, but you know, that do all the damage. But now you're talking about it. The Queens, they're starting to waddle, and we did see Erik starting to push creep backwards a little bit further. But let's see, that is 3 Queens to 1 Void Ray. We have an Immortal out now, and Lings, they're just going to look to try to run right on through into the natural, segmenting out that position. And this Void Ray will go down. Yeah, that's a big surround on this army as well. Biles on the shield battery, and that's going to knock that down. So a little bit less static defense here. This is looking pretty nice for Erik.
It's not looking bad at all. Now the Immortal shows up from the back. 5 Roaches in production from Erik, so he wants a little bit more of a backbone, but beautiful force fields on the side of DisK, and the creep was barely dealt with in time for the Queens to not be able to contribute with transfuses here. Less than a minute ago, there was creep on that location, and that could have turned the tides of the engagement in favor of Erik, but as it stands, DisK, with his doing his due diligence to clear that creep as soon as possible, is gonna pay off.
Yeah, certainly. There was a drone with that army, and here's the question, right? Was that drone just, you know, sometimes you build drones, then you build army and just kind of get stuck with your army supply? Or was that a spore or a spine idea? Well, for now, I mean, it's dead and it doesn't really matter, but that would have been fun. Is now at DisK a little bit more unlocked on the map. Now he's got Blink. Now he's got these Adepts that kill all the Lings. These Immortals are just not going down. And we talked about how it looked good for Erik, about how that push looked like he was going to be able to push on through. I mean, great surround, Biles on all the static defense. But DisK buys just enough time. He's got 3 shield batteries back at home to heal up on. He's got 3 Immortals, a 4th one on the way. And even though he lost the Void Ray, it does seem like for part of this, Erik's push is starting to time out a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, the worker advantage heavily in favor of DisK for a very long time now. And when he got that surround, I almost wish that he had gone after the units instead of the shield battery with the Biles, because the units were locked in, right? Unfortunately, it was mostly Adept, so maybe he decides, okay, like, I'm gonna have enough DPS to take those down. And going after the shield batteries is 100% your Biles are gonna land, whereas with the surrounded units, maybe there's a chance that enough Lings die that they waddle on out and not all of your Biles connect. But I think it was the right play to go for it at that point in time. As the Lings attempt at another surround, can they get the Immortals? At least one of them will fall, but the stasis actually makes it a little bit difficult. Even though it doesn't trap that many Zerglings, it creates that lack of surface area to the right hand side where Erik is gonna struggle to pass on through. So DisK still in a very, very, very strong position here.
That he is, as the Adepts find their way into the natural. It's going to be, 3 more workers going down, but the big deal, of course, is that DisK scouted that A, there is a 4th base on the way, and B, it's not done. Not even close. So you add in the Disruptors, there's a 2nd Robo on the way. This army that you give him more time, and he only will continue to grow and become more powerful. And you talked about that drone lead, by the way, and I hadn't really looked at it in a moment. It's been like plus 20 for quite a while. It's not just a little drone lead. That is, DisK is mining so much more money right now that it's really not even funny. And as he adds in these Disruptors, this Roachling Ravager army becomes even more impotent, cats. Like, I guess you have the Queens and that's something, but what's Erik's path right now?
Erik's path is dodging the Disruptor shot completely, right? Negating the damage output of that unit completely. But I think that when charge is done, it's a different story, because the Zealots are going to be consistent DPS that are going to be able to deal with the Lynx very well, as the Adepts are doing that job for them for the time being. The Ravagers are not particularly durable. Now the Lynx do get a good surround, but the Disruptor is beautiful. The second one will catch some Lynx and also push back the units that want to be biling in the middle of that army, right? To actually have the Lynx be of any consequence, you want those biles on the surrounds. And this, while not connecting with all of his Disruptor shots, he did get a beautiful one connection. What he does is effectively zoning out the units that are a threat at all to him, while shaving off the Lynx with ease. So great moves here from the Canadian.
And you talk about that surround he got. He surrounded a bunch of Adepts, which, yeah, surrounds are always good, but of all the units that I would want to surround, if I'm a Protoss, all the units that I want to get surrounded, it's going to be a bunch of Adepts that are well upgraded. So for now, DisK continues to move on forward. He knocks a bunch of creep down. These Disruptors are just they're negating so much of the DPS. But now Lings on the right side are going to try to do a little bit more. And all the Adepts are dead, so these Stalkers, they're going to have to wage a bit of a fighting retreat. Disruptor shot gets 1 Ravager. But even still, I mean, that was the most promising fight we've seen from Erik for a little bit, right? Disruptors did not land. Lings got a good surround. But he's still down 20 army supply. He's still down 8 workers this time, not 20, not for that long, but DisK has its 4th base about halfway done. This is, and even more importantly, the creep spread that's been on the right side that has been such a thorn in DisK's side. Well, it's done now. It's gone. It's not really as much of a problem anymore.
Yeah, and this area that DisK is standing over right now would have been the best possible area for Erik to take a fight, right? So the fact that DisK is confident enough to step onto that side and just clear the creep comfortably is a really good sign for his chances moving further into this game, as he continued to add Disruptors, like you said, and now looking to potentially add and supplement his army with some Archons, which is just going to be the hard counter to what Erik has had, which is just a lot of Lynx to try and put the Ravagers to work.
Hey, Cats, what's a Pirate's favorite Protoss unit?
Let me think on this. It's a Ravi joke, but a Pirate's favorite Protoss unit. The Disruptor. That would be too bad. I don't know.
Archon is the roaches on the left side. They're going to trigger shield battery here, but I don't know that they're going to be able to do much more than that. Lings are going to try to add in, but here comes the army of DisK back home. It's a distraction. Cats, it is buying a little bit of time for Erik. Erik does have that 5th base on the way, but I feel like Erik needs something. Burrowed Banelings, right? I mean, obviously, it's against the Protoss, maybe not as effective. Infestor, Neural, get a Disruptor shot on the Protoss armor. I feel like he needs something like to that level to start to try to equalize this.
Yeah, he has Adrenal Glands. His problem is going to be the Archons, but I mean, in his mind, I think if DisK just continue to go for Mass Stalker Disruptor, then the Adrenal Gland Zerglings should trade very well against that. As now Erik does find a little bit of an opening here. Recall will be used, so Erik preemptively biding the places that might get recalled onto, as that Archon is basically forgiven just for lack of attention from the side of Erik. And now the Disruptor flank looks to have been absolutely nasty. 50 the supply lead for the Protoss player, who also enjoys and continues to enjoy that 20 worker lead. Just about. So yeah, game looking now nearly impossible for the Brazilian.
And he's adding on Storms as well. So it's Archons that splash damage against these heavily upgraded Lings. It's Disruptors if you can get the good shot, and even if you can't, Stormy Weather. They absolutely shred. So more Ravagers will go down. The Lings, they fled forward. Stalkers blink back a little bit. Of course, you want the Archons a little bit further forward. And Erik continues to try to make these run-bys happen, but now they're just Lings, or they're just Zealots consistently on the left side. It's making it really hard to force those in. So We talked about how Erik forced DisK's army back to try to establish this 5th base. Well, that lasted a grand total of about 30 seconds, cats, and no mining was found.
Yeah, absolutely not. Very difficult as well to make that work without banelings. I mean, the approach from Erik, very unique, very cool. Going for the +3, already has adrenal glands for the circling, so they are going to be extremely powerful. But yeah, I mean, it's not an army that scales particularly well, irrespective of the upgrades, right? There is so many disruptors on the side of DisK, a core of immortals, a bunch of stalkers that are going to be, at the very least, durable options here at the front line, and now Storm, like you were saying, being added as well, means that Erik is all but dead here.
Okay, so Erik is going to set up a bit of a surround here. Actually, maybe those Lings are just for a counterattack. And +3 in Adrenal, they can make miracles. But again, they need multiples. So Lings get on top of the base that Erik is trying, or that DisK is trying to take. That is going to go down very quickly. The Storm #1 doesn't really land, but there are just so many of them. Actually, Lings get on top of these High Templars, so the rest of the Storms are not going to happen. But it doesn't matter, cats. All the army's dead. Lings on the backside, but there are Archons just to buffer that one up. Disruptors are going to find whatever they want. It doesn't matter.
Last 5, yeah.
Yeah, this is going to do it here. Disruptors are even killing some of their own Stalkers, but the upgrades and everything else, they carry the day. And Erik falls down. Game 1 goes the way of the Canadian Protoss.
Yeah, just sheer numbers there on the side of DisK are going to provide him with a swift victory against an Erik that had a really cool approach. I feel like he had his moments. I feel like maybe he could have forced a little bit more out of DisK with his initial contain. Maybe just use the one drone that you already have there for a spine. Would have been nice just for optics and to make it a little bit harder to break out. Because as it stands, DisK kind of identified what was going on, and he makes Adepts, which are not a particularly strong unit in defending all lanes, right? Like, they're not very durable, etc. So DisK, with a very good read, manages to apply counter pressure to an Erik that was very unprepared, because in his games he's probably used to this having a little bit more of an effect on the mind of the other player, thinking that they have to wait a little bit to move out or to make units that are likely to hold a Spinecrawler rush or an all-in or something of sorts.
Yeah, certainly an interesting play, although I don't think we're going to see this on Game 2, as that is on Gressfon, and the Queens are going to take even longer to show up. But by the way, cats, you know, you asked about what vacillate means, and luckily some good people in chat were able to provide with the definition, and it turns out the definition is exactly what I did about the definition, which is be indecisive, be wavering between opinions. And in this case, I was vacillating on whether I was correct about the definition of vacillating. So there we go.
Yeah, I googled it.
Now
learned vacillating. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there we go. More words. There is, however, a word that I'm not a big fan of, and that is actually several words, and that is DisK is struggling to get into the game right now. So it's going to be maybe a little bit longer to get into Game 2 than we would like. But it means we get to talk more about what we might want to see out of these players in Game number 2, because it's Gressfon. It's a big map. We talked about how it would have been nice to see Spine or a Spore or something, likely a Spine, off the hatch cancel. Just a little bit more power to anchor. You talked about how the Adepts are, not really the best defensive units. What do we want to see out of Erik in Game number 2? Right? Game 1, we saw that, whatever you want to call that. Do you want to see more kind of things on that edge of the spectrum, or maybe something a little bit more middle of the road?
If I could tell you what I want to see about Erik, then it wouldn't be.
Sneaky.
Does that make sense? Yeah, because if I can predict it, then this can predict it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like he has to continue to be unpredictable. I feel like he has to continue to bring his own flair and make the game chaotic, just like he did in the previous game, but didn't end up finding success there. He needs to, trick DisK, to force DisK to make bad decisions. I think that is how Erik wins.
Sounds good. Yeah, I that makes a lot of sense. So going off that, then, I know we talked about how DisK is probably favored on paper, but Erik has been really peaking, and we don't know where DisK is. Does that mean that after this game number 1, you think that DisK is just kind of the better player, and Erik does have to do something that is unpredictable to try to match him?
Did the game start?
No.
I can't join.
Can you? There's a weird. It's Brazil. DisK also can't get in the game.
Oh, Brazil. Yeah, I have that server blocked.
Okay, please, please unblock that.
How do you unblock it? Jeez. Whew. Well, this is gonna be tough. Maybe I'll just cast this one from the PGM that you have kindly set up.
Yeah, we can do that certainly. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit longer here because of course, you know, if you're laddering it, it kind of can be a bit obnoxious to go and play. If you're in Canada, playing a server based down in Brazil can be a bit painful. So generally, players will go on the kind of they block some of the outlying servers just so they can have a little bit more consistent of a ladder experience. But when we're looking at playing competitive play, especially in this new combined region, we are going to be playing on those servers. So we're going to have to see.
A bit nasty. I mean, yeah, that's not fair, to be honest. The ping to Brazil server is just... Yeah. I mean, anyone that plays StarCraft and gets matched on Brazil knows the pain, I think. If you're not in Brazil, it's just not. For me, it's just so frustrating. I have to favor Erik heavily going into this next game.
Yeah. It's about as bad. Let's see. What am I? I think I'm about like 150 to Europe, maybe a little less, and it's 156 to Brazil. So yeah, it's in fairness though. I mean, Brazil is pretty far south of where we are, and I imagine the cables that are taking the signal there. Actually, I don't know. Are there undersea cables from the U.S. to Brazil, or does it have to go like down through Mexico and down south through Panama that way?
I have no idea. I've never studied the cable routings on the internet leading to Brazil, but they must be using some really shitty cables because it's just not a playable experience. And for me, that's why I have it blocked. Brazil, Singapore, Australia.
Exactly. No. Yeah, I miss the days though when you could go and just ladder on OCE and get Grandmaster with like Platinum MMR. That was really nice. Just so you could have the set your profile picture as Grandmaster Bayo. Back when I was Platinum, Diamond, whatever. But those days are long gone, and we instead have consolidated a bunch of servers under the nice, wonderful, wide umbrella of the of US East.
Never had to do that. You were one of those, huh?
No, I did not make true GM. I just had to make fake GM, and that worked out.
Right. Yeah. So why did you do it? Why
I know I didn't actually. But that was
you
the
didn't
name.
Actually. Oh.
That was the joke, right? You can go and Oceania was so sparsely populated that it was fairly easy. Regardless, though, we finally have our game. DisK was able to sort out his firewall settings, and we're all going to be good to go here. So now, knowing that this is on the Brazilian server and Cats will be playing from Canada, does that change what you want to see out of things? Or does that mean you just want Erik to go even crazier?
I don't want to play first. I want to cast this one. Chill. Yeah, I would say that Erik very...
Yeah. You are cutting out a little bit, by the way, so hopefully that...
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's up with that. I was listening to the VOD as well, and it seems like I'm consistently cutting out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should up my thresholds or something like that.
It sounds like your noise gate's...
On Discord?
Yeah, it sounds like your noise gate. It wouldn't be on your audio device. But anyways, we'll talk about that more maybe in the break as we get into game number 2 here. Erik's ready. DisK is too.
Nice.
And... Right. There we go. In the upper left, in the Raddies down 1. It's Erik. Keep you on your toes, guys.
And in the bottom right, he's up 1. It's DisK.
See what I'm talking about, though, after we do the intro and how long it takes to actually cycle in? EGM, the power of it. Clean feed, or whatever you want to call it.
It's not so pixelated. That's so...
I'm sorry, you are cutting out.
Really? Again?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, I'll try to be louder, right? That would be the way?
Yeah, or closer to the mic if it's a noise gate thing.
Okay.
Yeah. But, we're just going to blame everything on the Brazil server, right? Cats cutting out, people unable to join, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. All right. So we see Erik going for his standard hatchery here, as DisK has seemingly scouted a little bit earlier. I'm not sure. Did he scout in time to try to block the hatchery?
No, it was down. It was it went down like I think a second before the probe arrived. And I mean, this is Gressfun, right? So it's one of those where you almost don't need to do a 15 hatch to make sure you get the hatch done. You do, but it is, again, a lot closer because it takes, what is it? I think it's 38 seconds from natural to natural for a worker to travel across. So yeah, DisK, it was going to be hard for him to block it anyways, even with an earlier scout. Lings get on top, and, well, it's going to force the probe to either commit or go home. And it seems like it will commit to the scout just a little bit.
Yeah, one circling nibbling at it should never be able to kill it, as the probe will start regenerating shields if it gains enough distance. You need the second circling to actually push onto it to do consistent damage. So DisK very well knows that, and that means he stays as long as possible with the probe. Now, if there is a corner, the probe could still get caught, but now I think it's gonna start regenerating shields just in time, and Erik will turn around.
Yeah, man, corners are just about the worst thing. You watch all these games, and you know you got a Terran set up. They're sieging something, and the Zerg player, the Protoss player, tries to engage, but it's around a corner, so just everything dies. Whereas if they're in the open field, it would be fine. Corners are like, I don't know, probably the unsung heroes of StarCraft 2, right? Where they just or specifically like unit acceleration, deceleration. They change so many interactions, and we really don't talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. They're very important. When you're chasing an army, right, the units will start like bunching up, and then some units will get pushed to the back, which means you can get to pick off some units on retreat. Very common, for example, in Roach versus Roach, where the losing player will get taxed extra whenever he turns corners. And there's also, I mean, a lot of interactions with just the range, right? Because a corner will give you that diagonal angle where a unit that has range can shoot across it, whereas a melee unit cannot. And that just makes it awful for, say, Zerglings going up against Marines or tanks, for example, which is the situation that you're describing with Terran utilizing corners very effectively very early on with those range units.
And cats, we gotta talk about what just happened here, because on ping, right, DisK is playing down onto the Brazilian server. He got 5 drones with his first 2 adepts, which just shouldn't happen. And now, well,
man,
there are 2 queens, but there is no spore, so he's just gonna stick on this a little bit, takes orange damage, and that's about it. But this is 8 dead drones before the 430 mark, and there's gonna be a second Oracle on the way. We're adding in the Robo. DisK has gotten so much more damage done in the super early game than he ever had a right to.
Yeah, no doubt. And Erik made a bunch of Zerglings as well to try and deny or cancel this third. We'll get the probe at least for his trouble, so we'll delay it a little bit. But now with the Oracle's back and the 2 adepts, I mean, it's not going to be for much longer. He goes to the door to see if he can catch the probe moving out, and yet again he does get the pickoff again at the cost of all of his Zerglings. That will be the last delay that he manages to put into that next.
I wouldn't be so sure here, cats. That's a lot of Lings on the way, and more importantly, a Baneling Nest. Just about done, timing up with the Roach Warren. Erik does have his 3rd base. And I guess he is droning up a little bit more, but this seems like he does want to put a little bit more dedicated pressure than just a couple Lings on the 3rd.
Yeah, but with 3 Oracles out and the Adepts well tucked in, I don't think that the Zerglings can find too much. They will find, I think, a pylon there if they want it, but at the cost of many of their lives, right? And there is a Stalker now in the wall-off, which makes the Baneling Nest that much less effective. If there was an Adept in the wall-off, then there is a chance that you can bust that effectively, like cost effectively, and then go in and do some damage with the Lings. But with a Stalker, very, very difficult, which means that if he wants to at all use his Baneling Nest, it's gonna have to be onto the 3rd and try to blow up some Adepts and a shield battery at best. So yeah, I think Erik does well here to not commit to that, not go for any sort of bust, and just instead try to drone out of this game.
So here's the follow-up question here, because yes, Erik, he got that early Baneling Nest far earlier than you normally do. Build a couple extra Lings. Do you think his plan was to bust, or did he have some sort of read that this was Oracle into, well, okay, more damage done, like Oracle into Glaive Adepts or something like that? But honestly, even Oracle into Glaive Adepts, man, 9 workers go down. You gladly trade that one for an Oracle. Even that's going to be 1 Oracle. That's not going to be the 3 that DisK has shown right now.
Yeah, Erik in a very tough position economically here, as he's gonna get +1. I mean, at this stage, you probably want to go for +2 and then start looking at the banelings with speed to try and, you know, do damage economically if he's at all gonna commit to this. He is going for Hydras, which is a little bit of a mid-game unit, right? Like, they don't scale super well into the Robo Bay units in the Colossus or Disruptors that DisK is preparing to go into, as the Oracles continue to rack up damage. This is a massacre here.
And remember, okay, so you don't want to lose 2 Oracles like that, but even still 8 workers, 25 in total is, yeah, for 3 Oracles, maybe not. Maybe you would like to lose 2 of them, but DisK is still going to be very happy with this. And again, this is DisK on heavy ping on Erik's server. I think you said when we realized what the server this was going to be on, that you really favored Erik going into this game. Again, just based on infrastructure, or like on server infrastructure. So the fact that DisK is able to do this on what is, again, should be a favorable condition for Erik it's very impressive.
Very impressive. And here's where the practice on Europe for DisK pays off more than any other player in North America. I think he plays Europe almost exclusively, right? So that's gonna be nice for him, because he's sort of used to controlling these units with ping, which are otherwise very difficult to control in the Oracles and the Adepts even. So master class of playing with lag here from DisK.
I really expected him to just save that Oracle, right? After he loses the other 3, it's like, you know what? You want to keep an Oracle out on the map. It's for scouting, it's for revelations, it allows you to do a lot. But no, he dives in and gets 3 more workers, and while he does lose the Overseer, the Observer, I think he saw that there were Hydras out. And this push, I mean, yes, there's a Spire on the way, but DisK feels ready to hit like that 150 supply timing with like a couple Colossus, Extend Thermal Lance +2, and just... If Erik makes Mutas into that, I don't really like Erik's chances.
Not at all. Maybe if he can make Corruptors or something and supplement his army with Roaches, there's a shot that he can defend, but things are looking amazing for DisK on the back of all the damage that he has done with the Oracles, and now, like you said, scouting a potential follow-up that's not gonna be a good idea for Erik to commit into, right? So the Spire is about to finish, but there's only 200 gas in the bank for Erik, so he is going to have some decisions to make, some very difficult ones at that. I like the Infestation Pit. If he wants to transition into something like Vipers, that would be a very good solution to the amount of Robo units that DisK is going to be popping up. But is it going to be too late? And I'm inclined to say yes. Very difficult for Erik to make this work. He's going to try to buy time by being aggressive on 2 sides of the spectrum here.
I know. I do like this idea, given the state that it's in. He's never going to be able to fight this straight up. He needs something. He needs Vipers ideally. Corruptors are really a distant second and kind of what you're looking for. So instead, force DisK to respawn on multiple positions. On the left side, on the right side. Maybe he makes a mistake. But now DisK is pretty confident that he's forced his opponent back home. He really took no damage. So
free Overlord.
Yeah, oh man, that's going to be 3 or 4 of them if he can get them all. Supply blocked here for Erik, actually pretty significantly. And, you know, Cats, 4 Corruptors, 8 Corruptors, that's not going to deal with 4 Colossus and Blinkstalker Colossus.
Not in time for his army to dish out enough DPS before the Colossus have done their job, right? And that is kind of the issue for Erik, who is making a lot of links, can't step out of creep right now, has to be very careful. Nice blink forward from DisK as well to punish the move out of Erik, as he now steps onto creep, and this might be go time for Erik if he wants to commit to it. 8 more Corruptors on the way, and at this stage he has enough Corruptors that, you know, when they're all out, maybe he can attack move with the Corruptors first, soak up some of the Stalker damage, and then follow up with his army as the Colossus are weakened, because his army is so fragile to this AoE damage that you have to mitigate for that first and foremost. Here he comes perhaps as the Corruptors are angling to go first.
And look at what DisK is doing here. He's just kind of consistently hallucinating Phoenix, making sure he knows where the army is. Lings come in from multiple sides, but the Colossus is just kind of sitting there. One will go down, and actually the second one's going to fall soon thereafter, but just everything else is dying. These lasers are doing so much, Cats, and now, yes, the Corruptors are going to kill these Colossus. What are they going to do next? They don't shoot down.
Yeah, this is pretty much game ending, as DisK plays an excellent series even under the ping situation that we were describing on the Brazil server, and he will close this one out 2-0. Beautiful display from him.
Yeah, really well done. And it comes down to the fact that he got 5 drones from the initial 2 Adepts. And we were talking about, I think, the last series in Europe where you don't see those Adepts get damage at all for the most part. They tend to put pressure on. Maybe they get a drone and they back up. But DisK getting 5 really set the tempo for this entire game. And DisK, he moves on 2-0.